Hello and welcome back to the Argyle CISO Leadership Forum. My name is Vicki Lebrunska with Argyle. It's great to have everyone joining us today. Just a couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator and our esteemed panelists. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsor's virtual booth at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partner is committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience today. And at any time during the event, you can visit their virtual booth from the main agenda page, and that does include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout this session and all sessions, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this panel discussion, Eric Mims, Director of Enterprise IT Security and Information Security Officer for the University of Houston System. We are so excited to have with us for a panel discussion titled Securing Data in the Cloud, Managing Encryption, Access, Identity. Welcome, Eric. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Vicki. I appreciate that. And as introduced, I am Eric Mims, and I do have the very, very too long title of Director of Enterprise IT Security, and I am one of the university CISOs within the University of Houston system. So yes, I have a great deal of experience, 25 years cybersecurity experience within university. But it doesn't match what I've been seeing looking at this team of panelists that I get to moderate. These are some awesome people. And I'd like to start the introductions. Erin, would you please start and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Logue-Smith. I work for Dell Technologies. I'm actually a lawyer by trade. I've been working in data privacy and security for about 14 years now. Currently, I'm on our cyber and compliance practice team, helping our customers become cyber resilient in this new AI world.
Outstanding. Thank you, Erin. Moving down my visual list here, Albert, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Albert Veysel Erdak. I'm working as CISO at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. I think I have been in cybersecurity or information security business for more than 20 years. In fact, not calculating the years anymore. I hope that we will have a very exacting discussion today.
Excellent. Thank you, Albert. And yes, after 20 years, you stop counting. Thank you very much. Tolgay, please introduce yourself, sir.
My name is Tolgay Kızılelma. I'm the director of our MS in Cybersecurity program at the Dominican University of California. I've been in the business for the past almost 3 decades. First part, 15 years focusing on IT, managing IT. And then the second, the last 15 years is really focusing around information security, governance, risk compliance, those type of things. I'm also involved with other community educational institutions, higher education, healthcare. But I think that the main thing is really the ongoing long-term commitment for learning and knowledge and everything. And be glad to be here contributing to this event. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. For those of you attending, please take a look on the right. And if you've got any questions while we're talking, put them into that chat window. And as soon as I see them, I will get to them. But let me just go ahead and start with some thoughts that we have and ask. I'm going to start with you, Erin. Coming from Dell, what are the greatest security risks related to data stored in the cloud that you are seeing?
So my focus really is around resilience. So a lot of the things that I see, and it's really, a no-brainer for most of us, since the pandemic began, data breaches, cyber attacks have really become the most critical aspect of a lot of my customers' concerns, especially around cloud. There's just so many different vectors and ways for people to, breach those generational aspects of where we're keeping our data. So for me, it's, data breaches is probably number one, and, loss of that data, with AI and, with cloud in general. A lot of folks are securing a lot of data, vast amount of data around AI. And with vast amount of data, then you have to make sure you're securing it, because if you do succumb to one of those devastating cyber breaches, losing that data, losing that critical data is, going to become a huge issue. So I could keep going, but I know there's other panelists for you to go to on that.
No, excellent. Thank you very much, Aaron. Albert, on your side, I know we might have some similar thoughts, but coming from your environment, what are the greatest security risks relating to data stored in your environment?
I will look from compliance perspective and of course the security controls perspective, because if the data or the systems are on-prem in our control, it will be possible to maybe implement whatever we like to implement. But if you start to use any cloud-based system, it's not easy to check or see if the owners or the service providers are implementing the necessary controls or complying with some of the regulations, standards, or the laws sometimes. And it is really important to check if they are really complying with these requirements, because these days there are the number of requirements, number of specifically compliance requirements are increasing. And for the enterprise environment, it may not be the case, but specifically for the higher ed environment, it is highly possible that any university, any higher ed institution will have students or faculty from Europe. And for example, we also need to comply with the international requirements, or like the GDPR from Europe. And if the service provider is not complying with these type of requirements, I mean, they are already introducing a huge risk to our environment. That's why it's really important to check if they are complying with these requirements or the frameworks or the standards or not.
Excellent, and a very good topic is the compliance issue of it.
Yes.
The rules, the laws. Aaron, I see you nodding as your lawyer background is probably going on there. Tolga, coming from California, you've got your own set. California's got a lot of laws on there. What do you see from this point?
Definitely. I mean, I was going to say the go with the compliance route, but I've already kind of covered it. Yeah, I mean, I think California, I'm just going to add to what Albert already mentioned. California, I think, is one of the leading states in terms of, when it comes to compliance, legal, and all those things that we initiate the CCPA. But I think there are other areas in terms of how we utilize data, cloud, and creating that value. But mostly it's really around configuration issues, I think, is really important to address. The cloud services, it's not like the way you have on-prem and there's this traditional mindset and there are unknowns, and maybe there might be some generational differences in terms of how we utilize different services, that mindset of technology. And so when it comes to that misconfiguration, the concepts might be different. So the potential to do things properly or not do it right, it can be leading to unintentional exposure of data if you don't have the right skill set, right capability. So I would say about the misconfiguration, that's one of the definitely top risks from my perspective. And the other thing I think is going to be around insecure APIs, because that's how cloud works, right? That's one of the key fundamental elements. So the weak access controls, poor identity management practices can lead eventually to unauthorized access to cloud resources, which can create data breaches. All those things, they're really, I think, important. The last I'm going to mention so that we can, I think, move forward. Now we're going through this, maybe we're over the hype, maybe is the AI, right? That's the other thing. I think there are all these AI related risks that impact the data, how we use, how we create value, how we go through the whole data lifecycle. I think that's another risk, like data lifecycle. They're everywhere as we go through the different steps. So you might want to take that into consideration, the lifecycle elements. But regarding the AI, I think every organization, industry, we were talking about this, right, in terms of what the vendors are kind of exposing and pushing us towards. But I think there's that AI-related components that we have to take into consideration as we're trying to create that value for our audience, for our customers, users, right, whoever those that we serve. We need to be really careful in terms of how we kind of find that balance between the value proposition and the risks that come associated with it, whether it's the different types of AI risks, obviously, data poisoning, bias, and from all those things. But I would put that as a separate category of its own, even though it is still, at the end of the day, another one of the technology-related risks. But I think it should be a separate category at this point. Thank you.
Excellent. No, thank you. Thank you. This leads to the next question here. And again, I'm going to go back to Aaron. And from Dell's point of view, what are the most significant ways that you're seeing organizations improve their approach to cloud security? And perhaps a related question is, what do you see that's working for them?
So, zero trust has become a buzzword. People, kind of throw it around quite a lot recently, but I have to stand behind that. Zero trust is something all of our customers and partners are talking about and implementing. So I think, and I think everyone on the phone knows what zero trust is, but basically trust but verify, don't trust anybody. You have to secure everything. So really implementing and embracing that zero trust framework is where we're helping our customers to secure the cloud, along with really focusing on encryption and making sure that that data can't be seen, stolen, or compromised, changed, anything like that. But I think we do have some great laws, especially out in California, around privacy, but we still don't have a cybersecurity regulation per se here in the United States. We're behind on that. So we have to really rely upon, the NIST framework, zero trust framework, architecture recommendations, things like that we're seeing from the government, because although they're not required at this time, we are really making leaps and bounds forward to protect our data from a legal perspective, from a government kind of like forcing all of the states to really, look at what they're doing, especially around critical infrastructure and things like that. So I think, zero trust will be my number one. Then also, identity and access management, we have to make sure that we're controlling those avenues, and that falls in line with the zero trust mindset. Oh, and, the other thing that I really do find people lacking in is their continuous monitoring and testing. So once they implement all of these, great encryption and zero trust, architecture type of that mindset, they think they can set everything up and they're good to go. But I really, really emphasize with my customers that we have to continuously monitor, and we have to go in and do testing on an annual basis to really validate that what we're doing is good and right, and see where we need to make some changes, do some risk analysis, gap analysis, and things like that.
I'm glad you said that, Aaron, because like Tolga said, you got to have, you still got to have this knowledge, people. You're not just giving your data to hold for somebody else. You still got to know what's going on, because it's still your data.
Yes, you do. You have to have a hands-on take on it.
Exactly. You have to have that. And it also goes back to zero trust. I'm going to trust you to hold my data, but I need to verify that you're doing it correctly.
Yep.
So awesome. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Albert, from what you're seeing, what is good about the approach to cloud security in your, what's working there?
I will support, of course, the zero trust, and instead of saying zero trust, because specifically in the higher ed environment, if you say zero trust or something like that, I mean, it may create some kind of negative perception. And I prefer to say back to basics, because when we look at the fundamentals of zero trust, I mean, we are in fact implementing all the basic principles of information security. And that's why I prefer to use back to basics. And I love to use the analogies and to explain the concept. But in addition to these type of technical controls or technical improvements, I also prefer to review the contract and try to explain the impact of any actions any department is trying to take, because as we explained, yes, we are sharing our data, trying to get a service from a service provider on the cloud. They are guardians of our data. They should be the guardians of our data. That's why they need to implement the necessary controls. But we need to be sure that, yes, they are implementing the necessary controls. And if something happens, because the contracts are at the end of the day are the documents that we can use not in the good days, but in the bad days. If something happens, and that's why these documents should also address uh, what will happen if something happens. That's why I always we have a procedure for example right now to review all the requests and reviewing the privacy policies, security policies is the major part of this review process. And there was another thing in my mind. The reviews, yes, I mean the continuously monitor the activities, what they are trying to use, and it's also important to review what type of integration methods or the communication methods they are using, because we need to, first of all, maybe transfer some of our data or integrate some of our systems with the cloud service providers. I unfortunately saw that some of the providers are still using very simple technologies to get the data. And some of them are kind of, again, very reckless to ask us to get the whole data from our database, free access to everything. And these are kind of, I think, not acceptable, or maybe at least we need to find a boundary about the data we are sharing, or the way that can use the data on their systems.
I think one word that might help is accountability.
You're right.
You've
Yes.
got to hold the vendors accountable. And Aaron, I'm sure you'll be happy to hear this. I tell you, one of my best friends is general counsel at the UH system, and having that relationship, having that, and it is eerie to know that they know me by name, but it is absolutely beneficial and helpful. Tolgai,
Sure.
you're
Well, one thing I'm going to mention right away is, if we continue to focus on, how we protect it, how we do this, and secure this and that, I think we're missing the big picture. I think we should really look at the big picture in terms of how we really create value and what we should do to accomplish that, right? That end goal, whatever that value definition within your own industry. I do agree with Aaron and Albert in terms of the points that they made. So starting with Albert, I think that baseline security is really important. But we need to do more than that. We need to start have that mindset of how can we mature that process, right? How can we just having the baseline security, and that's really one of the challenges, especially in higher education, achieving that baseline security, because with the limited resources and the open, inviting culture of the higher education, it's really not that easy to establish and accomplish that baseline. But we need to push the limits to more than the baseline security to get to that next level of maturity, second, third, whatever. Back to Erin's point, very valid that she mentioned about the continuous aspect of monitoring, testing, obviously, which is important. But along with that, I think the awareness, security training, the continuous security training, awareness, that's also important, because we want people to know what to do, what not to do, all those things, right? So that there's that emphasis. With the technology, with the AI, these things are becoming more easy. It can be automated. And coming back to the automation, that threat detection response, I think another piece that being done properly or improving, going forward, because of all the, we talked about data, so much data, so you have to automate it. You can't really deal with it manually with the limited skill set and capability. Talking about data again, encryption, I think Aaron mentioned, the data classification aspects in terms of how you do policies and those type of things. Again, using the tools, the automation aspect, I think, also allows us to do the data classification, and the management of that part of the data lifecycle, I think, is very, very important, and we need to focus on that and utilize the latest technology and tools more effectively, efficiently. The last point I'm going to make is around, we're doing all these things, with an eye on the value proposition, the end goal, right, for our business in the industry. But how do we make sure, right, I mean, you can talk about measurement, that's one thing, but making sure the controls in place, the auditing aspect, right? That compliance, the regular audits and compliance checks, making sure what we have in place really do work, right? They do work. Maybe there are gaps, address them, improve them. So with that constant focus on that improvement and making sure the things that we have in place, that there's that adherence to the security standards and regulatory requirements. I mean, think about whether if you're in a healthcare, what does that mean if you're not HIPAA compliant, or I mean, there's no such thing, but that you are in that shame wall. So, or GDPR. So the audits really, I think, another way we should keep doing that. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And I really like your encouragement of let's raise the bar. We've got this baseline security. Okay, you know what? That baseline needs to be.
Yeah.
Let's raise that bar.
We really don't have a choice on that one, sir.
Absolutely, especially with AI, when you can go in and you can ask AI, hey, by the way, can you show me all this information that, by the way, is supposed to be protected? But oh yeah, I have access to it and didn't even realize. So absolutely. Aaron, I'm going to come back to you. Tell me what you see as the top challenges related to anticipating the next generation of privacy risks, cybersecurity risks related to cloud computing.
So, I mentioned this earlier, but, my main concern with my customers right now is cyber resilience. So not just, keep saying resilience because cybersecurity is something we all know and love, but being resilient is being able to withstand a devastating event. So at this point in time, that evolving cyber threat landscape that we're seeing, it's not just a random ransomware group that's out there anymore. It's now nation state attacks where, there's actually really a lot going on in our world. You turn on the news and we see that over in Russia. We see what's going on in China. We see what's going on over in the Middle East. So one of the main things that our customers, we talk to them about, and Tolga just mentioned it, is raising that bar, because it's really not a matter of if but when at this point. So we have to embrace that evolving cyber threat landscape, and really also make sure that we're embracing the new regulatory aspects that are coming down. As I mentioned, there is no cybersecurity regulation, but this cyber threat landscape that keeps changing, there is a lot more scrutiny just across the globe. Europe is leaps and bounds ahead of us. But what that means for us as people that are trying to implement these architectures and to protect our data is, you could be doing your best. You might not have the budget to do so. You're trying to do the bare minimum. But if you don't step up and really start to prove, especially if you're in that critical infrastructure type of deal like oil and gas, energy, water, and then, I kind of consider healthcare at this point a critical infrastructure, because they're targeting hospitals, and that's, those are lives. If you can't access patient data, or you can't actually, a lot of surgeries now rely upon, digital aspects of computers and machines to do those things. It can really bring an entire nation state to a standstill. So that's really the trend that I'm seeing around that piece. But then also we have to make sure, as the cloud grows, as AI grows, data, we have to put it somewhere. You start to introduce more vendors, more fingers, more hands in the cookie jar. So you have to make sure that you're protecting that whole supply chain. You have to make sure that you're not just doing the right things. You again have to make sure that all of the people that are supporting your environment are also, stepping up to the plate and ensuring that your data is going to be there. It's going to be protected. And if something were to happen, you're going to be able to recover it.
Excellent. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah.
Albert, talk to us about what you see as the top challenges.
Cannot control everything on the cloud is, I think, one of the big challenges. Yesterday, I was talking to one of my friends, and he has a company, IT, focused on IT and cybersecurity. And he asked me to perform a very simple scan, and I performed the website, because he is hosting the website on one of the vendors. I don't know the name of the vendor, but I realized that it's a very simple website. I mean, it should only has, the web port open, and I realized that there are lots of ports open and lots of services running on the server. And so I said, okay, please talk to your vendor. And this is kind of unacceptable because you are a cybersecurity company, and this shows a kind of very different image. And as a, for example, customer, I'm not a customer of him, but if some customer looks at your website, and they will think very differently. And he said that I talked to the company, they are not accepting, they are not changing the configuration because they are also hosting some other companies, and this is the general configuration, and that's why I will move my website to another organization. I mean, please, yes, as Aaron said, continuously monitor what your vendors are doing, what they are offering, what they are providing. If you move your services, you need to check what they are offering. All the if they should have at least some kind of security certifications, and they need to assure that they will secure your data, they will secure your systems, and you need to negotiate your terms. And I highly encourage to use at least some kind of third-party risk management system. There are some vendors, I think they are kind of reasonable from the cost perspective. And if you start to use them, I mean, you will see at least how the others or the world is seeing your vendor from the outside. You don't need to perform, or you cannot maybe perform some security scans or detailed scans, but these vendors can perform this type of work, and they can provide, I think, a comprehensive report about your vendor, and at least they will give an idea about what they are doing, how they are protecting your data. And of course, the privacy risk is another issue on top of this one, because I know that a lot of vendors are also using data we are uploading to their systems, although they are saying that they are anonymizing the data. But since everybody is right now trying to use AI needs huge amount of data, and they need our data. And I'm sure that they are using our data. And if something happens, because they are also not disclosing what type of model they are using in their AI model, or how they can anonymize our data. Maybe they are not. I mean, there is no evidence that they are anonymizing our data. And these are all privacy risks.
Thank you, Albert. Yeah, that makes me think of so many vendors. It's alarming. Are doing the bare minimum, or are assuming, well, I'm a vendor who uses this cloud, and this cloud they have security, so clearly I'm secured. And it is alarming how bad that is among some of the vendors who should know otherwise. They should know better. Tolga, what are you seeing as top challenges coming
Sure.
up?
Obviously, there are lots, and I'm just gonna tag on Albert's point about the agreements and making sure you have those, right. So related essentially is really that vendor lock-in, the dependency that we have. That's really important because with all these services, the commodity aspect of things becoming, so we more and more we're becoming very, very dependent, and so we need to keep that vendor lock-in along all the points that Albert mentioned, and make sure we have that. Again, back to Aaron's point about resiliency. So what happens if you want to make that change? I think the other couple of things I wanted to mention about the resilience is the ransomware aspect that Aaron mentioned. So as we've seen, that's kind of an availability issue, right? Your service, but that same thing goes for your third-party supply chain. Think about the CrowdStrike; it's an availability issue. So that's another those type of issues. You have your reliance on a third party, and the vendor lock-in, the dependency. But again, coming back to my points about the outcomes and business value propositions, we need to balance the innovation with security. Things change quickly. That's itself another I think challenge. But how do we really balance that? And because we really we might have that, depending on the industry, it might be our next competitor. But how do you come up with that innovative approaches while balancing with an eye on the privacy, security, all those things that are really, for some, it might be perceived as basically a barrier, right? But we need to make that transition from a privacy security perspective, put it along IT to, oh, it's not a barrier, it's a business enabler, right? That risk. The other, I think, aspect is with the things happening, the advanced technological evolutions, just like with Gen AI and ChatGPT, is moving rapidly. So it's really hard to kind of predict. Again, coming back to maybe the resilience Aaron's pointing out, how do you predict these future security vulnerabilities and privacy aspects and all those things when we know the term VUCA, the volatility, ambiguity, and complexity, those type of things. So that's, I think, another itself is important. And I think one other thing I'm going to mention is really around maybe to the global threat landscape and the geopolitical risks. We have elections coming up. What does that mean for you, for your organization, for the industry, right? That's important at the national level. And the lack of skilled cybersecurity professionals, because that's always an issue with the limited resources. How do you address it? Do you always rely on third parties, which then becomes that vendor lock-in, the dependency risk? Yeah, so I think those are what I think is the list of risks.
The vendor lock-in.
We're talking about data, the unknown around AI. There's that black box mentality, right? We don't know what goes there, so we don't have a clear understanding. So there are AI-related, obviously, challenges to skill set and how we can really create that value while, again, finding out that balance about the innovation and the security privacy risk through the use of AI. Thank you.
Excellent. No, thank you. Aaron, again, I'm going to come back to you. Can you share us some examples of innovation in terms of applying AI for improved cloud security?
So I think, again, I keep harping on, incident response, like data protection, data breaches, cyber resilience. I think that we can make some huge, leaps and bounds by implementing some AI, threat detection in the cloud. The sooner we know about a breach, the better. So we have seen a vast improvement around AI threat detection. And then automated incident response, there are ways to implement that. So if we do see a red flag come up around that threat detection, we can have an automated incident response plan that's already going to start going down that fire drill chain of, setting out alerts, letting people know, and getting the right security professionals involved, as well as the legal risk and compliance officers. So everyone is on board at the same time. I do think too, behavioral analytics is a huge thing that we have to look for. And these vast amounts of data that we're seeing being pushed up to the cloud, really, threat actors are now, spending that long periods of time, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and even longer, kind of like hunkering down and, resting in an environment to try to understand the best way to cripple an organization. So using those behavioral analytics to really pinpoint where they're kind of tinkering away and things like that, these are vast improvements that I'm seeing in the AI front and really helping to improve that cloud security around cybersecurity out there.
Excellent, Aaron. Thank you very much. Albert, what about in your area? What are you seeing the innovation in terms of applying AI?
To be honest, Aaron addressed almost every point. But I'm expecting that right now. I don't see any this type of system on the market, but I'm expecting that in the near future, AI will also help us to address the potential maybe vulnerabilities or potential risk with any vendor. because we need such a system. Unfortunately, we don't have anything right now, and with the improvement in AI, I hope that somebody can develop a system that will help us to detect at the early stages of any involvement, any vendor, and the potential risk.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Albert. Tolgai, what about from your area? Where are you seeing as innovations in terms of applying AI for improved cloud security?
Sure. When we talk about innovation, like they're innovative ways, right? And that, I think we as the consumers of those innovative products, we rely on vendors, and so big players, especially with the AI and technological advances, they're coming up with these different ways. They kind of see, okay, this is the next thing, and this is what and again, back to a point, they push those innovative ways. And again, as Aaron mentioned, they're with the different areas, whether it's the threat detection, incident response, and identity access management. There are areas, there are ways those can be, I think, made better, improved from a maturity perspective, right? That's one thing. But the real innovation, I think, really comes back in terms of how the vendors and the customers working together, really creating those business outcomes and part of the value proposition. One area I think I see this happening or is about to happen is we talk about the SOAR, right, security orchestration automation response, but I think that my model is changing, and I know some one or two, maybe one specifically, vendor startups kind of pushing the boundaries towards risk orchestration automation, and really because that's at the end of the day. That's really what it is, right? It's a business risk. Security is all about business risk, business outcomes. And I think that risk focus will make a huge difference in terms of how we create value for the organizations from an innovation perspective, how they add to the bottom line, whatever, again, their value proposition is. So other than the automation aspect of all the relevant domains that fall under the cybersecurity, incident response and security, predictive analytics, all those things, I think the risk focus itself will become more important, and I think that's really the innovative solutions coming out from different, very few vendors, I think is what I see.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to go to David LaRue asked, what are some of the recommended approaches for assuring data recovery in the event where your data is held hostage? And I'm going to admit to you, the first thing that caught to my mind was, are we talking vendor lock-in or are we talking a malicious attack? Let me just, Aaron, what would you say in either one of those cases? What would you say? How do you get your data back?
So you broke up for a second. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. So David LaRue asked, what are some of the recommended approaches for assuring data recovery in the event where your data is held hostage?
So making sure that you have data protection. You want to make sure that you have backups. So, make sure whatever you have stored out there in the cloud, that you also have a secondary copy. We always recommend some kind of air gap analysis to keep your data secure. You want to have, on-prem is really great to have an offline backup that is separate from the production environment. So whenever you do succumb to a devastating cyber attack and all of that data has been encrypted, you have a secondary copy that has been protected. And using, some great AI tools and analytics, you can make sure that you have those mission critical aspects and that you have, those gold copy images that are untampered with, ready to go. Second to that, I think, really embracing your incident response planning, whether you do it in-house or you hire an incident response service, you need to make sure that you have those people engaged. And a lot of times, whenever someone succumbs to a devastating cyber event, they call up an incident response team and they come, and they should usually be there, within 24 hours, boots on the ground. But if you engage with an incident response team and an incident response plan prior to that devastating event. You have to engage with them, get them to know your architecture, whether it's in-house or it's with a vendor. You want to, go through a gap analysis, risk assessment, and really do a lot of tabletop exercises and planning, because when that 0-day event occurs, it never goes according to plan. You think that you're going to do A, B, C, and D. You're going to get back up and running in a matter of days. But what we're seeing really is it's a matter of weeks to months to really get that data back up and running and make sure that it is clean, secure, and you can rehydrate appropriately.
I'm glad you said that, Aaron, because one of the things that I've learned is, of course, what's widely known is any plan goes out the door 1 minute into your disaster.
Oh, absolutely.
But if you rehearse it and
Mhm.
you know the environment and you've got people who know what they're doing, they can flow with it because they know the bottom line and they know what the end result needs to be. And doing that practice means you get your data back, you recover. Albert, let me ask you about David's questions. What are your recommendations for assuring data recovery?
Of course, the most obvious answer is having backups, but I am also thinking about having a disaster recovery or business continuity system. If you have a proper disaster recovery system, functional disaster recovery system, and if you are already implemented the fundamentals, not the baseline, but when I say fundamentals, I mean the fundamental concepts like the segmentation, access controls, zero trust in general. Most probably your data on the disaster recovery side will be still accessible and can be usable. And that's why disaster recovery is maybe a more expensive solution, but I think it will also help you to recover your data.
Excellent. I see we're getting down to about 2 minutes left in our time. Tolga, I was wondering if I could jump to
Eric, actually, I'm just going to mention one thing about the data recovery, because we're talking about, there's protective, it's basically boom, right? If something happens, it's not about protecting, it's about after the fact, right? What happens, the threat vector, they might have it. So I think it's very important. There's no 100% guarantee, but if you're working with outside, companies, because you may not be really experienced in this when your data is out there, ransomware. So you have to work with an experienced firm, whether it's a security firm or not, who can guide you through this process when your data is out there for you to recover. Up to that point, you're protecting, right? Obviously, backups is one thing, but that's the other thing you need to mention. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's all right. I appreciate that. But I'm going to go back up the list now. 1 minute, 20 seconds left. What's next in cloud security, Tolga?
So my thing is all about the continuous monitoring aspect that Aaron mentioned, but I think the focus will shift to more risk-oriented approaches. The risk orchestration automation, I think, is going to be the next thing. The AI-driven risk quantification, the third-party continuous threat exposure management, those type of things, I think will be all there. I'm just saying the continuous aspect will become more highlighted, more emphasized of all the data out there and the AI being available to us. Thank you.
Excellent. Aaron, what's next in cloud security?
So I will say, Albert, I do apologize, but I disagree. Disaster recovery is not cyber recovery. So that's something we have to really think about moving forward. We have to make sure that we're ensuring that cyber resilience. So we have to really embrace this paradigm shift. There might not be a flood or a lightning strike or a hurricane, but there is a 99% chance that you're going to succumb to a cyber attack. That's just the ages that we're in. So really making sure that you're, using the tools in your toolbox. You want to make sure that you're turning on compliance lock, governance lock. You want to make sure you're having those backups. They're secure. They're separate from your production environment, and that you have that team engaged, as we just mentioned, to really get you back up and running, that's trained, that is tested, and is prepared.
Thank you very much, Aaron. We are out of time. Vicky, I believe I need to turn things back over to you now.
I think we could have gone on for a while. This is a fabulous panel. Thank you. And I want to thank Eric. I want to thank you, Tolga, Aaron, and Albert for such an insightful panel discussion. I want to thank everyone for joining the session. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. And as a reminder, please do check out the prizes and raffle rules section to see how you can earn points for the chance to win a prize. Our next session will begin at 12:25 p.m. Eastern Time, and that'll be a keynote presentation titled Data Does It, 2024, Navigating Compliance and Data Regulatory Issues. Please click on the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected to that next session. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you again to this wonderful panel.
Thanks, everyone. Take
Thank you.
care.